Hey guys and girls, welcome to this review of The Last of Us. So this is going to be The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2. It is called Through the Valley, and oh my god, full spoilers from the start of this review as always. And here we go, this is the episode that Joel's tragic fate is sealed, so full spoilers. Abby does indeed get her revenge, her sweet revenge from her point of view by the end of the episode, and it is the most brutal and cruelest of revenge as well. So get to all that stuff, and it's a funny thing this coming this early in the season, so fans of the games are familiar with this and have been anticipated. And it's just funny thinking about the disconnect with the other side. If you are more of a casual, you haven't played the games, you're not that familiar with them, and you're going into blind into season 2 based on coming off how big the Joel Ellie dynamic and relationship was in season 1. And you had no idea this was coming. I mean, this must have knocked you sideways, so it would have been interesting to get some reactions from those people. Now, I'll be honest, I did have an inkling it was coming. I had heard that this is something which happens in the game, and I heard little rumours that it was coming up quite early in season 2, so I wasn't really shocked about it. So it lost a little bit because of that, but, you know, sometimes maybe it helps to be ready for these things. But I wasn't 100% sure it was going to be this episode. I thought either it's going to be this episode or the next one, but I was prepared. I knew it was coming up at some point, and we can discuss it because I guess one of the... maybe from some people's point of view, one of the things that they would pick out or say, yeah, then we didn't expect it this so soon in the season, and it might just come down to this being a shorter season, this only having 7 episodes, so they probably had to do it sooner rather than later. You could always argue they could have held it off for maybe one more episode, but then we'll see how the pacing of the season works out. And as we know, Game 2 is being split into 2 seasons, basically. So almost 2 parts. So let's wait and see how the pacing goes. But I'll just sum up my thoughts on the episodes and say I think it's a really great episode. I love this episode, and all the big dramatic moments hit. And I have no problem with how things play out at the end of the episode with the Joel and Abby stuff, and I just thought all that stuff really hit home very well and was very impressive, and was, even though I suspected that it might be coming this episode, it still left me pretty speechless. Also, the end of the episode, and when we see a little bit throughout, definitely confirms that Caitlin Denver is the ideal choice. Then she's a great choice to play Abby, and I know people have complained and said no, she's not right, and I know they're bringing that from the game, so that's fair enough. I mean, I want to hear from those people, but I just think as far as the show goes, it's great casting, and I think she absolutely nails it, and she really shines in that final scene, I think. So you can sort of break this episode down into like 3 sections in a way, 3 big sections. I talked about in the first review this season that I was hoping we would get a little bit of a backstory for Abby, and we would get a little bit of, well, why does she have this vendetta against Joel, the motivations. So I was happy that that's how we started the episode, that we, as they're riding in to the town, that we get the flashback, and we learn that at the end of season 1, when Joel killed all those people in the hospital, we flash back to that and him making the choice to kill the doctor. Just so ruthless, anything to get Ellie out of there. So that's the reason, because the doctor was Abby's father. And we find out that at the time she was only, I think they said 19, but like certainly like a teenager, so very young. So never easy, obviously, but a lot of rage, a lot to deal with, and it's 5 years later basically. So she and the rest, as I said, we saw them looking over the graves in the previous episode, and they go on this 5 year journey, and that's the motivation, that's the backstory a little bit. It's possible we might still get more Abby flashbacks throughout this season a bit later on. I could see them doing that maybe, but yeah, I'm happy we got this context of why she's doing it. And I've got to say, even though she's very much like a villain in this episode, Abby, I will say, like, you can definitely understand why she would want revenge on Joel and why she's got so much rage and angst. Like, and that's what good writing is in many ways. Like, it definitely shows you both sides, because Joel ultimately is very much, even though he's one of the good guys, quote unquote, of the show, there's a lot of compromise to that. There's a lot of, he's a very murky character, and I think I said in the previous review, like, this season may well get into some of that of, we've sort of seen certain things he's done where, okay, maybe they're not the most honourable, or he's being very ruthless, and some of his actions are questionable, but because we've always seen it through, he's doing it to protect Ellie, we've always seen that as being quite honourable, and they are like the protagonist, or were the protagonist in season 1, so we've always accepted it because of that. But there's always room to then look at some of the other stuff he's done and some of the impact it has on other people, and just question some of that stuff. So I appreciated that, and I also liked when they get to this town and Abby gets into trouble later on, because they're talking about strategy with her and her group, and it is interesting that her group are very hesitant about this whole thing. Like, she's very much the driving force, and she's got tunnel vision and saying this is the way it's going to go down, but they're talking strategy because they realise there's a whole setup in this town and it's well guarded, all the rest of it, so they have to think of like an actual strategy. And what I like is that one of the group is basically buying time, because later on when Abby leaves and she goes out and is like searching around on her own, he says to the Nora character, he says, well, we're going to try and talk her out of this, really, that this is a mistake, and we're going to go home. But as the episode goes on and things come to a head, you can see that they're sort of on board with, okay, this is the mission, we're here for revenge, let's kill Joel. But there's this difference between them and the way they would do it, where they would just get it over quick, and what Abby wants, because Abby wants like full-on revenge and really wants to savour it. And then there's also Abby, you get the impression sometimes she would be happy to kill others if they got in the way, whereas this other group are like, no, that's not really the mission, like, we should try and avoid killing anyone else if possible. So I do like that side of it as well. Then there's this conflict between her and her group, and once again I really like the direction at times in the episode, and how you've got like Abby, who's obviously quite a small person, quite small stature, like wandering around like this snow-filled like hills and mountains and looking out over it and just fighting the elements, which is a big part of obviously the survival horror of the game, because there's like a snowstorm coming, and we see her reacting. But that's when, because everyone gets separated, like people have gone out onto different things. So Joel and Dina have gone out together, which is a big point later on in the episode. So I'll sort of circle back to that, but basically they end up picking up Abby because Abby gets chased down by the creatures. And this is once again some good direction, like the way she runs and is on the other side of the fence and they're coming after her from the other side, and it's this constant sort of race. And it's one of the visuals that was in the trailer, and it's a really good sequence. Very well done. And eventually Joel and Dina ride up and save her, and Abby says, okay, my group are hiding out on the cabin. We've got supplies. We can help because Dina has been injured at this point. So she's like, okay, come with us. So Joel's like, get on the horse, and obviously has no idea who this is. So they ride up and head off to the cabin. And I think that just shows you in the moment how clever Abby is and how manipulative, and how she suckers these people in, how she suckers Joel in, because like he has no idea who she is. And so she's very quick in thinking. It's like, yeah, okay, this works. I can get him back to the cabin, and then I've got him. So really quick thinking. Like, it could have just been instant, but that sets up what we're going to see at the end of the episode. And then we get this really big, it almost feels very Game of Thrones, when the creatures start attacking the fortress, essentially, and we see all these different things that are set up, and like how they're all set up to fight them. And it's very epic. It does feel very Game of Thrones in a way, and I'm not complaining about that. But yeah, Tommy is leading everyone, and they all have their roles. And at one point they roll these big barrels off the top of like the fortress, and they sort of shoot some substance out which kills some of the creatures. So it's very sort of meticulous and clockwork, but obviously there's so many of these creatures, and they just keep coming, so they can't handle all of them. And there's, once again, we're seeing how these creatures are starting to think a bit more and come up with like game plans of their own. So they've got, I'm not quite sure of the term of it, but one of these bigger creatures, and it's able to make it to like the wall and break through the wall, and that opens up so that the others can break in. And this is where things get really dramatic. And it's a good moment for Tommy, this. It's a good scene for Tommy because he puts himself on the line and he distracts the creatures, and he's got the flamethrower which can obviously like kill them. But yeah, he puts himself on the line and causes a distraction, and the bigger creature starts following him down this alley, starts running after him. And it's really this tense thing where Tommy keeps shooting at him, keeps shooting the flamethrower at him, and the creature just, like, he gets burnt, but he just keeps coming. And it's this really tense thing because you can see Tommy's backpack running out of the thing. So it's like, is it going to run out? Is the creature going to get to him, or will the creature die in time? And because you keep cutting back and forth to Maria's reaction and her shouting, Tommy, no, and like really panicking, it really sells it as well. It's great direction. And because at this point we've had a decent amount of Maria and Tommy, and we're invested in their relationship, then you definitely feel and worry for Maria. But it's also quite a good misdirect, because at that point I wasn't too sure if this was going to be the episode that Joel died. So I was thinking, oh my god, like in the scene they convinced me that this may be it for Tommy, because just how dramatic it was, and the fact that they cut to his backpack like running out of like the fuel. I thought, yeah, he's screwed, he's gonna die. But in the end the creature does die just in time, so it saves him. But it's a credit that they made it that tense, and I did think, yeah, this could be it for Tommy. So it's like a sigh of relief, because I did wonder if maybe he's the sort of character who could be sacrificed. Maybe if you're thinking about a hierarchy, but I guess it was a bit unlikely if you're going into this episode thinking this is the one where Joel is going to get killed. But they sold it very well, as I said. And then we build towards the end of the episode where, like, they're recovering, but they've all been, like, kind of separated. Ellie is off with Jesse. They're doing their thing. And they do a good thing of just bringing everything together, because at one point they learn that Joel and Dina are out on their own, and so Tommy starts to worry. Ellie gets word of this over the radio, so she naturally is worried about Joel and what's going to happen, because they're in a compromising position. So that's when she runs off and Jesse tries to catch up with her. But this is when, yeah, we build towards what's going to happen at the end of the episode. And Ellie goes for Joel to try and save him. So back at the cabin, yeah, they come in and the others realise who it is when Abby mentions it. And yeah, then they come up with this plan where they knock out Dina. Like, they knock her out for an hour, so they've got this gas, but they take her hostage. That's, like, part of the thing to like, get Joel to go along and not try and fight them. And once again, we see, like, Nora's trying to be like, okay, just we'll knock you out, like, for an hour. Don't worry about it. We're not gonna. And she's promising Joel, we won't kill her. Like, this is just, leverage, basically. So that stuff. Once again, good stakes, because we know that Joel and Dina have a close bond, but they do knock Dina out, so she can't do anything to save him. And eventually, well, the torture just starts because Abby makes it clear who she is and starts, like, ranting and raving. And yeah, Caitlin Denver again is so good in this scene. Like, she's just so powerful, and there's so much rage that comes from her. She starts monologuing a bit, which I don't mind personally. It just feels like something the character, this loose cannon of a character, would do. And just the reaction as we see her just lay into Joel, and she gets the golf club and she just starts brutally pounding him for what must be a very long time. And she just continues it, and you can see the others wincing, and the guy in the group says, for God's sake, just sort of end it. And that's what it comes down to. As I was saying earlier, I think they're very much on the mission of, we are here to kill Joel, but there's no way they think we should be torturing for like ages and ages like this. Just bloody do it, and we can get out of here. But that's not the way Abby wants it to go down. She wants to, like I said before, savor every moment and to make it the most brutal, painful death it can be. So she cripples Joel and repeatedly hits him, and eventually Eddie gets there and she runs in, but she's outnumbered, wrestled to the ground. And this just makes it all the more cruel and tragic, the fact that Ellie has to watch the whole thing go down, and she can't do a thing to save Joel. And it's at this point where he's basically beaten to like a bloody pulp, and I forget the guy's name, but he basically says, for God's sake, Abby. I also like, just going back because I forgot, but the line about Joel Joel has to Abby, where he's like, if you're gonna kill me, just fucking get on with it, like he says. And it's that, because she's ranting and raving and going through all this history, and you can see he's shocked in the moment, and he definitely feels quite sad, but in his own way. Like, I think he definitely wouldn't think that, okay, he did what he did, but like, he wouldn't wish it onto this girl. It's just like the consequence. But like, yeah, it's almost like the longer the thing goes on and he sees how vengeful she is, like he's like, for God's sake, just do it if you're gonna do it. Almost like he's accepted his fate. But as I was saying, that is how cruel this is. The fact that Ellie has to watch the whole thing go down, and eventually Abby puts Joe out of his misery and kills him right in front of Ellie. And the eye line is just like matching, like Ellie's watching this go down, and that's it. Yeah, they sort of flee because it's not really part of the mission to kill Ellie. And you do think in some ways, maybe if you're being like super cynical and thinking from Abby's point of view, not that she's necessarily thinking this, but maybe that's part of her way of fucking with Ellie a bit like, okay, we're not going to kill you, you're going to stay alive and see it and feel the consequences. And yeah, it's just so well sold in the scene, and Ellie's screaming at the top voice, I'm going to fucking kill you. So no surprise to anyone, Ellie has revenge in her mind, and that's going to be the way. That's going to be a big thing now moving forward in this season, is that she wants revenge on Abby. Probably revenge on all of them, but that's it. Like I said, and then the one cruel final blow, which is just so gutting, because Jesse, I think, also has got here at this point, but them having to take Joel's body, like, you know, like it's in I forget what it was in now, it was in some sort of bag, but yeah, them just having to drag it back to like the camp. That's just like that last one cruel bit of fate, and just twisting the needle a little bit more in for Ellie. So, well, yeah, it's really powerful stuff. It's really shocking stuff. Very well done. Regardless of if you knew it was coming or not, I think the moment and the scene just lands, and I think it's a really good episode, this one, anyway. I have very little complaints. I did, as I said, enjoy some of the stuff with Tommy and the way he was put in jeopardy, and we got a little bit more of Abby, and yeah, it sets up things moving forward. So we'll see about the fallout here. There's going to be some massive fallout, but again, you can debate maybe if they should have waited another episode. Is it too soon in the season? I guess because of the shorter season, it's weird pacing, but I thought this episode really delivered, and very little to complain about for me. So that's my review of The Last of Us, episode 2 of season 2, Through the Valley. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Keep watching TV.